Hey guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 5:30 now. We still have a few people that'll be coming in. Welcome to the meeting. Jim's going to do a quick disclaimer here.
Just want to inform the public of the location of the Open Meetings Act posted in the northwest corner of the council chambers.
All right, we'll do a roll call. Who's here so far?
Cox, Einspar,
Here.
Caney,
Here.
Lindsay, McKenzie,
Yes.
Shukai, J.C. High, S.C. High,
Here.
Steiner,
Here.
Waite,
Here.
Wyrick,
Here.
Williams.
Here.
One bit of business, John C. High is coming off of our committee due to medical reasons. He's had some medical issues, and so we wish him well, but he's been an asset to us so far, but he will not be attending tonight and moving forward.
Okay, first order of
Troy, will
business.
that position be replaced?
That it can be replaced in the bylaws, we'll just have to discuss that, but yeah, possibly, depending how long we are to conclusion here.
Okay.
First order of business is the approval of the minutes. We would accept a motion for approval.
Yes, so move.
Second.
Got a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed say nay. Okay, very good.
I could do the housing study part, the first part.
The first order of business would be the presentation from Keelan and Associates on the upcoming housing study with also Rita, our housing director, and I believe Keith Carl is here. So if you want to just come up and one or both of you, whoever wants to present and talk about the housing study that's going to be going on or is starting to go on and inform us about the process.
Hey, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Really appreciate it. My name is Keith Carl. I'm a community planner with Hannah Keelan Associates, a community planning and research firm based out of Lincoln, Nebraska. We as a firm have been in business now for 48 years. We have 4 planners on staff with a combined 100 plus years of professional community and regional planning experience, dealing with everything from comprehensive planning, comprehensive planning, zoning and subdivision regulations, downtown revitalization, neighborhood redevelopment, blight substandard determination studies, you name it, we do it. We're basically kind of a planning centric type firm. One of those other activities too is housing studies, communities and countywide. We do regional housing studies as well, and that is the process that we're putting on for the city of Norfolk and for Madison County. Taking a look at a number of different aspects of data as it relates to population, income, economics, housing stock condition, housing stock occupancy, vacancy, values, rent, stuff like that. There's going to be a whole host of different information pieces that are put into this housing study document. We've had the good fortune of working in Norfolk before. We completed a community housing study in 2014. We did a countywide housing study for Madison County in 2019 that included a bunch of data for Norfolk. We also put together a housing study update for the Norfolk Housing Agency in 2021. So the last time we worked in your community as it relates to housing was the year 2021, and now we're back here again to revise and renew the housing study for Madison County, which will include an extensive review of housing stock condition, population, income, and economics for the city of Norfolk. So we've had the good fortune of working in your community. We understand the economics, and there's been a tremendous amount of housing development in your community. I mean, you folks have done a fantastic job in the provision of housing, but it's time to update that vision, update that direction, and see where the community needs to go in terms of new owner housing, new rental housing, housing for special populations, and things of that nature. So we'll take a look at a number of different data points from the U.S. Census, Department of Economic Development, the American Community Survey, Center for Economic Studies through U.S. Census, Department of Labor, everything like that. Any data source we can get our hands on to, tell the story of what's going on in each of the communities and what's going on in the county. We do have an organized housing steering committee that is part of this process. In fact, we just finished up with a meeting with that committee not too long ago. Got a lot of really good input from a number of housing providers in the area, representatives from each of the communities, from a governmental standpoint, an economic development standpoint. So we got a good base to get some preliminary information prepared. There will be a number of different surveys that will be implemented. A general community survey that goes out basically to anybody and everybody within the community, looking to get their input as it relates to their current housing situation, what they feel is needed in the community, and then just kind of having the public provide some general information on the general housing conditions, the housing situation within the community. We're looking at a workforce housing needs survey, which can go out to a select number of major employers within the communities, to find out their situation on housing, especially for those that live outside of the community but commute in for their employment. What kind of housing would it take to make them, to allow them to become residents of the county so that, you're increasing your tax base, you're increasing your population. We have a couple other specialized surveys, one that would go to your CEOs and your presidents of major employers to find out, do they have any sort of incentive programs to buy down the cost of housing for a prospective employee, and then would they be interested in a program like that? What are some of the issues that your major employers have in terms of retaining talent, recruiting talent, and how does housing play a role in that? And then also taking a look at the opinions of housing stakeholders, your professional housing people, those with assisted living facilities, nursing homes, specialized housing programs, contractors, developers, you name it. We'll have a distribution process for those surveys that we are currently developing. We do utilize Constant Contact for a survey platform. That survey can be available online. That allows us to live track the results as they come in. We can also have hard copies available for those that maybe don't have internet access but would like to provide their opinion as it relates to housing condition, housing status within the county and within their community. So there's a number of different ways that it'll be advertised, a number of different forms of media that citizens will be able to participate with that in. We're looking at about a 5-month process, having at least 3 total meetings with our housing steering committee to help us kind of analyze the data that we've put together and then kind of draw up the vision, the 5-year vision for the county and for each community on what their demand is going to be for housing development, housing rehabilitation, demolition replacement, things of that nature. If we're looking to alleviate a certain percentage of some of the most critical housing issues in a community, that being distressed housing, cost-burdened households, lack of land availability, financial resources, whatever that may be, how many housing units would it take to alleviate a percentage of those critical housing issues? So there's a number of different components that will be included with that housing study program. Like I said, we just got out of a really good meeting with our housing steering committee, got a lot of really good input from a number of different housing professionals and community professionals, from City of Norfolk and throughout Madison County. So we're really excited to continue on with that process, and if there are any questions or comments about the study process itself, anything about the surveys, about the data, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
I have a question on the general survey. How do you propose to reach out to anyone and everyone in the community on that?
So like I mentioned, we use Constant Contact. They have a survey platform that we can create the survey electronically, and then once the survey is published, there's an online link that can be put on social media, websites, in print, and different forms of media that you so choose. We can create QR codes. We've had a lot of people that take the survey on mobile devices, so that would be another media that would be able to be utilized. It just depends also on how creative communities get with advertising. We've had communities use cable access channels. We've had them do radio interviews. We've had We've had sandwich boards in the town square, for example. Just kind of whatever the communities decide to do to advertise this process. And Rita will be helping us out as well to help get the surveys out and create press releases as necessary. So we do have a number of different ways that it can go out.
Typically, what's your response rate on as you described there?
So it kind of depends on how creative a community gets with its advertising and how oversaturated they make their market for the survey. We've had communities of 7,500 that, they're just not the bottom line is they're just not participatory in surveys, and we get less than 100 back. We've had one community, for example, that had a 65% return rate. But, they really created a survey advertisement system that allowed them to get that result. We can only look at the people that actually access the survey and whether or not they fill that survey out completely, and then submit the results. So, based on that, about 32 to 35% of people who access the survey that then complete the survey is what our target would be.
Is there an old-fashioned paper one that can be mailed to everybody in the community? And hopefully they would return it?
That would be up to the community if they want to mail it out to every house, because our responsibility is to create the survey and then
Okay.
tabulate the final results.
Gotcha.
So if that's the direction the community decides to go, that's up to them to do that. But it does elicit another form of collecting data from general
Sure.
public. So.
Okay, thank you.
You were saying that it's a 5-month process. Do you, at this point in time, have a start date?
Start date
You know
was
what
today.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But we had our first meeting with the steering committee. In fact, I just came from right over there at the library, right down to here. And we had, how many would you say, Rita? Probably close to 20 committee members, each one representing either a professional housing provider or representing local government or economic development from each of the communities within Madison County. So I think we're going to get some really good responses from each of the communities, and we enjoy working in the city of Norfolk as well, and there's a lot of professional input that we get from all sorts of leadership. So we're excited about the process and can't wait to keep going with it.
How often do you, I think you have to do, or the cities are supposed to do a housing study, is it every 5 years?
Every 5 years.
And then why is that? Just educate us.
I guess I should back up. It doesn't have to be every 5 years, but it does help with, the evolution of economics and housing markets and everything that, 5 years is pretty typical for most housing studies. The other side of that is, for grant programs, thinking of our smaller communities like CDBG, for example, utilizing, let's say, downtown revitalization dollars. Some of those grant programs through DED and through whatever entity you choose to apply for, they'll look at studies completed within a 5-year period. Some of them are within a 2-year period. But typically for housing, we've kind of just followed the norm of it being 5 years because that's kind of the requirement from most of your state funding sources.
It seems the last time you did it was 2021, so, right?
2021 for the city of Norfolk, 2019 for Madison County.
Okay, well, this is post-COVID now, so I would assume that it's maybe less predictable, the outcomes and stuff, than it probably was pre-COVID, I would assume.
Right.
It kind of changed a lot of things, I imagine.
And the benefit of this one from the other studies is that you'll have the official 2020 census data as part of our data analysis. The other studies didn't have it yet because it wasn't released yet.
So this is just for the city of Norfolk, or is it for Madison County?
It is for Madison County and each community within. So there will be city of Norfolk data in there for that.
Just a couple questions on the survey. Will there be an open comment section where the responder can actually just add comments of what they would like to get across in the survey?
Yes, there will be.
Okay. And then in terms of affordability, will there be a question about what the responder feels is affordable for a single-family home or an apartment by number of bedrooms, like what they think is affordable for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? Is there a specificity on that so you can get some feedback about what they're looking for in terms of affordability?
So it would be based on what that particular survey participant feels they could afford for the housing that they need. So we have a question like that, and then there's a question that also asks you, what are you currently paying for your mortgage payment, or what are you currently paying for monthly rent? And when we see, what you're paying versus what you could afford, there's an elasticity in there that we can see, maybe they're paying too little and they could afford more, or they're paying too much and, need to downsize, for example. It kind of helps to see where there's a gap between what a majority of your participants can afford versus what they are actually paying.
So do you get information on their income, or just what they feel like they can afford for rent or mortgage?
The only information that we get on their income is them marking, what is your current income?
And it's a range.
Yeah. There's a number of different options, and then it's, let's just say 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and so on like that.
In terms of vacancy rates, how do you determine that?
So vacancy rates, we take a look at the number of housing units that currently exist within the community, utilizing 2020 census data. That's kind of where our base is, because it does give you the total number of units as per that census. We've been in contact with the city of Norfolk, taking a look at their year-to-date permits, the permit review. I'm blanking on what that's actually called right now, but to see how many units have been added to the community since that census. And based on that, with the number of households, which would be the occupied housing units, you can see how many are considered vacant. Now, the one thing I will say is, when you take a look at the first number, it's probably significantly higher than what you would think it would be, but that's because it's including anything and everything that's vacant in terms of, homes for sale, homes for rent, rented or sold but currently not occupied, housing for, temporary housing for construction workers, for example. I'm trying to think of the other category. Seasonal housing or vacation housing would be considered vacant. If it's a house that is, let's say, for example, someone's receiving services in a nursing home, but they own a single-family home, that home's considered vacant. Homes used for storage purposes, homes that are vacant and not on the market, upper levels of commercial buildings that maybe haven't been occupied for 50 years. It's basically anything and everything that's vacant. And so what we do is we take a look at, MLS data, like real estate data, and then kind of honor the numbers in terms of, what would be on the market, like as an occupiable, habitable property, and that's what would be our adjusted vacancy rate. So then you can see the true vacancy rate of occupiable owner and rental housing units.
Do you actually survey some of the larger apartment owners to get a vacancy rate from them?
There will be a select number of rental properties that would be contacted to find out, current occupancy and rent range, and then that can kind of give us an idea of, what a target would be in terms of when we take a look at housing demand. We'll break it down even further into which income sectors need housing and how much housing, which price products should be targeted, which population sector should be targeted. So it'll be fairly specific in terms of, not just you need X number of housing and Y number of housing, but which population group is it going to support? What's the target price product or price point that should be aimed for with new development?
Do you do anything in terms of single-family homes? It seems like we've got a lot of single-family homes that used to be owner-occupied, now have become rentals. Do you gather any kind of statistics on that?
It's something that we're starting to research a little bit more, just because you get more, you have more like your Vrbo and Airbnb properties that are, short-term rental housing. That's kind of a new component of housing vacancy, because it's essentially taking an occupiable housing unit off the market. But it's still available for somebody to rent for short term, but it is something we do consider when we're putting our statistics together.
That would be interesting to know how that's transitioned, especially over the last 10 years. So.
Anything else, guys? Appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you all, thank you for also, you guys, both the city and you both adjusted your schedules a little bit so you could accommodate us today. So thank you for doing that as well, and thanks to Rita and your whole team for kind of organizing that and doing that. Thank you. So one of the things through discussion that we've looked at and I've learned quite a bit more about is, in my opinion, sometimes the truly affordable housing is probably not necessarily the new construction. It's, there's houses all over town that'll sell for less money than you can build a new build in most cases. And so there is some hindrance sometimes to redoing housing or rehabilitating housing if there's too many dollars that go in and that, then bringing it up to current codes in, like with the windows and insulation and different things. Obviously, you want a safe product, but you know and so we had a conversation with with the planning and zoning guys, and Val helped put that together, or the code guys anyway, and kind of learned a lot about that. And Steve has agreed to maybe come up and give us some insight into, you know, what happens where that threshold gets hit to adding, where you then have to really kind of bring everything up to modern code, and just some of what he looks at that kind of goes into that. I just feel like sometimes that product that could be affordable becomes unaffordable because of certain things. But still, you want to put safe people in safe houses and things like that. So we asked Steve to come and visit with us a little bit about that.
So, the question that you had the other day was more concerning the energy code and how that applied. So I did print these off. This is Nebraska state laws that relates to the energy code in the state of Nebraska.
Thanks, Steve.
So the part of that, you know, we really discussed the other day is on page 2. Right down at the bottom of the page, number 4. Building means any new structure, renovated building, or addition which is used or intended for supporting or sheltering any use or
I'm sorry,
occupancy.
Steve, can you tell me which section that is?
Section 7, 8160 is the very last paragraph.
It's just right down at the very bottom.
Gotcha,
at
gotcha.
number 4. Intended for sheltering, supporting or sheltering any use or occupancy, but not including any structure which has a consumption of traditional energy sources for all purposes not exceeding the energy equivalent of 3 or 4/10 British thermal units per hour. So then, number 5, residential building means a building 3 stories or less that is used primarily as one or more dwelling units. And number 6 is one that really kicks in from the renovation, means alterations on an existing building which will cost more than 50% of the replacement cost of such building at the time the work is commenced, or which was not previously heated or cooled, for which a heating or cooling system is now proposed, except that the restoration of historical buildings shall not be included. So that gets us to the 50% rule, basically, on rehabbing some of these older homes. So if the rehab of it is going to cost more than 50% of its current value or replacement costs, that's when all the rules kick in, really. That's building code stuff that you just have to bring it up to today's standard. And so that can get pretty extensive sometimes. And this is just dealing with the energy code here. But that's also applicable to the building code and, you know, then drags you into the plumbing, mechanical, and electrical, and, I mean, it can be, one thing just feeds onto another. One of the first things I look at when I go into an older home is the foundation, to get an idea as to what kind of condition that's in. And so a lot of the older homes in Norfolk, the foundations were never meant to be a finished area. They were meant for storage and whatever else. Storage of fuel, you know, whether that was coal or whether that was an heating oil tank down there of some kind or whatever that was, wood. Many of those older homes, the stairways into the basements don't meet today's standard by any means, and then your headroom standards don't meet either. So, and then just the overall condition of them over the, you know, decades and decades and decades, they just tend to deteriorate at a point. So replacing a foundation is typically going to be a $15,000 to $20,000 deal. And so, you know, everybody's got to be, and then if they want to make that as a habitable space after they replace the foundation, well, now you got to look at the stairways. The old stairways that were into a basement that was, you know, just 6'8" or less. Now you've got to pick that house up a little bit or dig a little deeper to get headroom down there. I mean, one thing leads to another with them, and it's not very practical a lot of times to have the basement as a habitable space. So then your footprint on the main floor and sometimes on the second floor becomes all you have to work with. And unfortunately, Norfolk has a pretty severe termite problem. I mean, you can go into, you know, we probably on average have about 1 to 2 homes a year that get demolished because of termite damage. They are just very, very extensive. And so that's an issue. I'm going to let you guys ask questions because I figured you had them since you asked me to come.
I guess that brings up the difficulty of saying that the older homes in town are the affordable homes, because if you want to do anything to those homes, it suddenly often becomes cost prohibitive, and it takes those homes off of the market, takes them off of the inventory.
It does. It can. I mean, you know, there has been times where we've had homes demoed that, gosh, it was painful to have that demoed because relatively well-built homes, but the owners just let them slide into oblivion. They would basically abandon them and just let them sit. And I think Scott knows of one.
You must have been talking about my former next-door neighbor.
Yeah. I mean, the house sat there for quite a number of years, and when we did finally get into it, it was just all full of mold, and the foundation had started to fail, and there was just, you know, it was a brick on the exterior, but now you have to deal with that if you're replacing the foundation, and it just became one of those deals where I mean, for me, that one was painful because it was a well-built home. And we have another home or two in Norfolk that right now it's painful to march forward with our process because I think there's, you know, these homes in particular could be saved and provide them with a good home, but the owners have no desire to do that. And, you know, and we don't have many options.
The process sometimes can be pretty overwhelming too if you're not like a contractor or something where you come in and do your stuff. If a regular citizen were to buy a house like that needs some work, just coding and zoning and just understanding all that. Even financing a lot of times too. I mean, you can finance the house, but not always the improvement. The micro TIF is an opportunity, but then again, if you do too much work, you punt that into maybe that $200,000 house is becomes $300,000 because of all of the updated stuff. So it's just curious the way, how do we save more of these houses that are truly inhabitable and not the safety concerns? Sometimes the energy thing, sure, you'll save money over time if your electric bill and you put new windows in, but if you can't afford the payment to begin with, you're kind of stuck. And so it's a circular problem,
It
I guess.
is, and I hate losing a lot of these old homes because I like the old architecture. When I built my house, I put old architecture on the inside of it. I like that look. But there's just times that it is difficult at best to do it. And one of the other things I've found after 29 years with the city is that people come in with a very, very unrealistic idea as to how much something is going to cost. I mean, they'll come in, and anymore, my just about a standard answer is you need to double that and add another 25%, and hopefully you're in the ballpark. And more often than not, that is absolutely the case. I mean, when they're looking at it, they want to do it so bad that everything is, oh, that isn't going to be very hard. That won't take very much. And they don't bother to go out and get really hard numbers on stuff as to what it's going to take. And remodel projects are the hardest because you'll dig into something and it's like, oof, they didn't plan on termites, but when they dig into it, now they're finding termites. And it's good that they did. That's why we typically tell them, do all your demolition work before you start doing any construction work, because we want you to have a good idea with eyes wide open as to what you're going to see or what it's going to cost you when you start putting it back together. And there's been more than once where we've had people, okay, they were going to dig into it, and after they got into it, it's like, we can't fix this, and those homes went away. And so it's kind of surprising to me that more of those lots don't get built on faster. I mean, we've had quite a few in the last few years where, probably 3 or 4 a year that we've got new homes built on some of those lots now. When Habitat was, building a few homes, since probably I would say 2010 at least, all the homes that they built were on lots where the homes had previously been demolished, so they were going back in there and building into those neighborhoods. And it was kind of nice to see is that, what used to be the worst house in that neighborhood now became the best house in that neighborhood, physically to look at. And now all the others started coming up a little bit because they didn't want to be the worst looking house in the neighborhood. And almost without fail, that happened in those neighborhoods.
I've been through one of those renovation projects, and you're well aware of it. And the house was built in 1920, and I think I spent 3 times at least what I paid for the house in the renovation process.
And what you planned on spending.
And yeah, it certainly was eye-opening along the way. Yeah, you open one thing and you find you have knob and tube wiring, and you have to rewire the whole house. You find out the whole HVAC system didn't work, and you have to redo that. I mean, it becomes the ball rolls downhill, and it becomes an enormous number.
And if it hadn't had its historical background, you would have probably been reluctant to do that.
Absolutely. So, unless there's other questions on that, you talked to us a little bit about some research that you've done to build truly affordable homes. And maybe that's, if the cost of rehab is so great on some of these older homes, maybe the truly affordable new homes is an option we need to look more seriously about, and I just want you to talk about that.
So I've got a floor plan here. So this is one that I helped develop with Habitat for Humanity probably 20 years ago. We just needed different floor plans and different options. Some we have our slab on grade that Habitat has. I think this is one of our first ones that we started building that actually had a basement. Typically, we would do this, Habitat would do this house when they needed more than 2 bedrooms, and then they would finish the basement off right away. But it isn't a case where the basement has to be finished off right away. You know, so there's 1,046 square feet in that floor plan, and it gives you 2 bedrooms, bathroom, living room, kitchen area, an unfinished basement, which that would have the laundry and mechanical room down there. And I've also got, so I've gone and tried to get pricing on that house as to what it could be built for. So, you know, on the, when you're looking at on the pricing, on the higher end, that was with different options through the lumberyard. You know, there were some things that we could have done there that would increase the price more. And my goal was to get this under 200,000. New house under 200,000. That was my goal on this. And right now, it looks like we pretty much achieved that.
Steve, just to clarify, that doesn't include the lot costs.
It does not include a lot at this point, because I don't have a lot. But potentially, you know, some of the older lots in town, you know, the value on those would still allow this to be under 200,000 when you're looking at that price.
I was very intrigued when you presented that to us, when we talked about it over the phone. I mean, you're talking about a construction cost on a brand-new build for $185,000.
Yep.
And so adding a lot for, you know, an older lot in home, or, excuse me, an older lot in Norfolk for $40,000, $45,000, you're talking about a, you know, $215,000, $20,000 home.
Right.
And that's without the benefit of TIF. So if there was some ability to TIF that home, I mean, you could be talking easily under a $200,000 new build.
Potentially, yeah. And these are, all these numbers came right from contractors. These weren't numbers that I made up just hoping that it could get done that way. These came directly from contractors, so I'm, you know, pretty confident in all of those.
I mean, that gets me excited because we just heard about the challenges of renovating an older home and the cost to it, where you could have a brand-new build for $200,000 that don't have all those issues.
Right, right. I mean, a new home like this should be pretty much maintenance-free for 10 years. I mean, it's vinyl siding, so you don't have to keep it painted. So I don't cheat on windows. This has very good windows in it. And that's just a place where I won't cheat. And so the basics of a home that you need to last a long time, that's where you spend your money. The stuff that people are going to change out, floor coverings, especially, that's something you cheapen up and let people replace those later on.
So these prices are all subcontract prices?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
So would you add something if you had somebody that was the general contractor taking care of it, or do you expect the homeowner to be the general contractor?
So one of the things I've always, well, not always, but I've begun to think about lately is, you know, Habitat for Humanity is a worldwide organization, and they are very, very successful. They have built all over the planet. And yet we can't find a way to do that locally unless we have an organization that is like Habitat do it. That just seems kind of like we can do better than that. You know, so why can't we do that through government? Why can't we have a habitat program within our government.
And we no longer have Habitat here, is that?
They're here, but they haven't built anything for 5 years. About 5 years. And Habitat is now transformed into Fuller House, which is I've heard people call it a branch of Habitat, but I'm not sure they are. I'm not familiar enough with that to tell you what that is. But yet we don't have any construction happening that way.
So if you had a general contractor involved, what would the markup be? 10%, 20%,
They're probably going to want 20.
20? Yeah. Okay. Still an affordable house.
Well, not to as many.
Well, I get it.
I mean, that's the one thing when we look at, who were the Habitat homeowners. Those are folks that couldn't go to the bank and get a loan. That wasn't a possibility. And one of the things that for Habitat is you looked at what their income was. It couldn't be too high and it couldn't be too low because you still have to be able to pay off that loan. But it was a flexible process where you take your selling price of your home, determine what they could afford on a monthly basis, and divide that total cost of the home by what they can afford every month, and that's how many months they would have to pay it off. For some homeowners, they could do that in 20 years. Some it took 25. And when I was last involved with the organization, which was back in 2017, I think they were looking at 30 years for some. But the one thing about Habitat is it builds wealth within your community. Because you look at all those folks that were starting in those lower echelon homes, it was tough for them to make those payments at first. But as they kept their jobs and done better in life, those payments stayed the same. They didn't change. And so it was easier, it got easier and easier for them to make those payments, and with whatever money they had left, they were able to spend more of that in the community and not on housing necessarily. Whereas if I don't want to throw rocks at people that have rental properties, but their rents don't stay static over a 20-year time period. They're going to go up. And for those that are renting, it doesn't get easier. It stays hard.
So in a lot, like in a vacant lot area, something like this, there'd be the demo and removal cost of the other one, I suppose. Land bank, I know that there's people in the community working on the land bank concept. Is the land bank able to be married with something like this in some manner?
I don't have enough information on how land bank operates to be able to say yay or nay on that. I know when I was on the board with Habitat, a lot of times what I would give folks the option of is when they had a property that they had to demo, if they didn't want to demo it themselves, they would have the option of donating that property to either Orphan Grain Train, to the city, to Habitat for Humanity, whoever they wanted to donate it to. And then they could take the tax credits or whatever is available for doing that. And Habitat was a recipient of probably while I was with the organization, probably 10 homes or 10 properties. So then, they would have someone come in and demo it, and that typically worked out very well. Demolition for some of these homes, depending on the size of the house, but it can run, $10,000 to $15,000 now. So if you can come into a lot for that price, that's a pretty good deal.
It seems as though some of these really affordable, lowest priced houses, on the new construction side, when we build something new, maybe we watch HGTV too much, and we want granite countertops and main floor laundry and things like
You want a
that.
master bathroom,
Yeah.
you want walk-in closets.
When
and you
you're, when you buy a house that's already built, you accept some of that stuff. You're like, well, maybe I like this one better, but the bedroom's a little small, but this one, the kitchen's, whatever. And so you absorb some of that, where this project probably would be more construct and sell kind of thing, I suppose,
You either
maybe,
like it or you don't, and if you don't, then, it's not the house for you. I
Right.
mean, it really is pretty black and white. And when you're looking at, the entry level that this is at, there aren't very many other options for new housing out there. This isn't competing with anybody. There's no competition to this. If there was competition, we wouldn't be talking about it.
If anything, it's a starter home or something that you live in it, you build some equity, you move up into the next house, whatever, and
it helps
so
build wealth.
that's the area right now that's really troubling to me, is over the next 10 years, if we can't figure out how to get people that can afford a $250,000 house somewhere to live decent, that doesn't eat them up in maintenance bills or eat up the rent rate in those. 20 years from now, we're gonna have a generation of people that aren't homeowners and aren't tied to your community. Once you buy a house, you live there, you raise kids there. It's easy to move if you're renting.
Right, right.
So right now, in some of the older homes in town, if they were sold and the people didn't want to renovate them or do much work on them, there isn't anything that says once a home is for sale that somebody from the city comes in and checks.
No, we don't do that. So most of the properties that we see that are in a dilapidated condition, we either get a complaint from neighbors or we get a complaint from tenants that just couldn't put up with it anymore. And so we don't, we're not driving up and down the streets looking for these homes.
And what level do people have to come into the city to get a building permit or a remodel permit from?
So 32 square feet of drywall or more requires a permit. 32 square feet is a 4x8 piece of drywall. And so if they're replacing that much, when I first started the city, there was no policy on that. And we had a call from some folks that were rehabbing a home, and the question was, well, how much drywall can we replace without a permit? Well, we don't have any policy on that. Well, we got called back in there to that house by the subcontractors, and they're like, do you know what's going on over here? And it's like, no, we have no idea what's going on. And they said, you need to come down here and take a look. The whole house had been gutted, and they were just going to cover everything back up. They weren't going to insulate. They weren't going to put in new electrical. They were doing a little bit of plumbing, doing a little bit of mechanical, and they were just going to cover everything back up. And it was like, holy cow, this isn't right either, So we had to come up with something that would get us in there. So typically when you're doing, let's say you're going to remodel a bathroom, for instance, that might take or may not take more than 32 square feet of drywall. But it's probably going to have updated electrical in it because of ground fault and all that, and potentially plumbing as well. So that's when we started requiring permits at that 32 square foot level.
As I'm looking at this, man, when I lived in Lincoln, there's a subdivision down there called Autumnwood. It's for, I think, 55 plus.
Yep.
And I've been in one of those houses, and it looks identical to this,
Oh, really?
only not a finished basement.
Oh, okay.
And today, those are selling from $220 to $240. But they're nothing special. They don't have granite countertops, quartz, nothing like that. But they're selling in
Oh,
this
yeah.
area.
Oh, they'll sell. I
You
mean,
bet.
I have no doubt that house will sell. If it's built, it'll sell. No doubt whatsoever. And no, there is no amenities to speak of beyond what's necessary in that floor plan. I mean, we're not putting in granite countertops or solid surface tops. We're not putting in, cast iron sinks in the kitchen. I mean, everything is pretty basic, pretty basic. 4 shelves in the linen storage cabinet in that hallway, maybe 5. It's just a single rod with a shelf above it in the bedroom closets. That's it. There's no set of shelving for shoes and whatever else that they want to put in there. These are basic, very, very basic.
I do have a question. Under the low and the high, it says no cabinets in parentheses.
Where's that?
Be the 5th line down.
Oh, that number comes from the lumberyard. And so the cabinets are added down below in another line item. And so I actually had to go back to the lumberyard probably 3 different times because drywallers now, they want to furnish their own drywall. Well, so I had to go back and I had to take the drywall out of this. Roofers want to supply their own shingles, so had to have them back out the shingles from the price. And so, that price of 35 started around 60. And so some stuff got backed out, and it got added in with the labor from other sources, so it ended up virtually the same, for instance, the insulation and the walls right down at the bottom, that's about $2,000. That's for a blown-in product. So it's a 2x6 wall with a blown-in insulation, whereas a lumberyard had that priced out as bats of insulation, which the insulation itself came to $1,500. Well, this is only $400 more to have it sprayed in. And they get a little bit higher R value at times with that. So, and that's another place where I won't compromise is insulation. That's not where you compromise. Yeah, you shouldn't have to. I mean, that's because you can't fix that later. Once you put it in and cover it up, that's it. So you don't compromise on anything that you can't get to later. You can cheat on your bathroom faucets and your kitchen faucets, and you can, there's a lot of that stuff you can save some dollars on, but stuff that you can't get to later, you just spend the money.
And you touched on the insulation part of it. So this would be a 2x6 wall, a highly energy efficient home with a new energy efficient furnace, and so your energy costs are probably going to be significantly less than an older home.
Significantly less.
Have you, what do they say normally about 40-50% of the cost of a build is sales taxable? So because it's the inputs and things like that, labor, have you by chance broken that down to see what the sales tax take would be? Or do you think that's about an accurate number?
Boy, I don't know.
If it is, you're collecting sales tax on, $100,000. This is their input. There are positives with building projects as well, and that would be one that there's.
Yeah, I think no matter how you do it, if you're rehabbing something or if you're building something new,
And your pricing came from local
yeah,
contractors?
all local contractors, local lumberyard, all local contractors. My deal is to try to, if we're going to invest $185,000 into a home, let's keep our own guys busy as long as they're reasonable in price. I mean, if someone will come in and cut one of these prices in half, I'm sorry. The guy that can cut it in half is going to do it, so. But I don't see that happening with any of these. There's none of those that are going to get cut in half. None of them. There might be a little bit of savings on occasion on a couple of those, but the one thing I told him, I told him what my vision of how this could be done, with basically a habitat model. And boy, most guys were willing to step up. But I did tell them, I'm not begging here begging for as low a price as you can give, because I want it something that can be replicated. If they can't replicate this, 4 or 5 times a year, then doing it once doesn't do me any good. It's got to be something that can be replicated.
What inspired this project for you? Why did you start working on this?
It's just our in the city of Norfolk, our family has been in the building industry since '64, and that included homes like this, and it included homes that were built on, at that time, West Kenningstein. Custom homes that were very, very nice. Everybody should have a home. And it should be well built. And it should provide safety and security for that family.
Couldn't agree more.
I live in one.
Yeah, you do. You do.
I've got a quick question. Is there any consideration on appliance cost?
No, that is not included in it.
Okay.
Not that we couldn't. There's, again, it's not top of the line. It's something that, that's adequate for the day. A microwave above the range, and the range, freestanding range, and a dishwasher, which is probably a luxury, but it's just something that, I'd probably go ahead. And I didn't include any garage door openers. There might be room for that. I know for the first 5 years that my wife and I lived in our house, she was the garage door opener. So that's just the way it worked out. I started out in a very basic house, almost the exact same square footage. And, just through working and trying to get ahead a little bit more, I don't live in that house anymore. But I could have, if I could have put a third stall on that property, on that garage, I would have probably stayed in that house. And I finished off the basement, which basically doubled the square footage. And so, now you're looking at 2,000 square feet. Most people can be comfortable in 2,000 square feet with a family. And this allows for sweat equity, that you can finish that basement off. You can go in there and finish it off yourself and, make it, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It's when it's all done, it's a nice house.
Do you have numbers on that finishing the basement off?
Nope, because we're not going to do that. They're going to do that.
Right, but just, realistically, you're still looking at,
If you're going to finish off that basement, it's probably going to cost materials somewhere around 25.
okay.
So this is something that if the city wanted to do this, I would like to know through our housing study if this is in fact something that people will buy. Because we can build them, but if the first-time home buyers are saying, no, I want more than 1 bathroom, or what, I want to know if people will buy this.
So my answer to them, then you should go to the bank and qualify for a loan and buy that. What you want.
No,
So
if
on
they
this,
want to buy it,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
So the
that's.
last homes that Norfolk Housing did on Oak Street, there was, I believe, 5 homes there. 4 or 5 years ago, they were selling for $175,000. They had no problem selling those homes. These homes will sell. There's folks out there that are living in rentals that are a lot less than this, paying much more than what their monthly payment would be in rent, that they're getting nothing back. And that's, my idea is, and all this is just my ideas. I mean, I haven't really asked, city to support any of this, it's just my wild idea.
Jen,
Just happened to get brought up the other day, and here we are.
Jen, I think that, from a will it sell standpoint, though, every day we're selling, or there are houses for sale that are not new builds at or near this price point right now that people are buying, and then they're putting money into upkeep and maintain them and things like that. Not that
There are homes selling for more than this price that are old houses that have foundations that are in questionable shape, that don't have near the quality of windows and insulation package in them that this would have. It may not even have the square footage. I was at a house the other day where the house next door, they said it sold for $260, and I just, when you looked at the house, that was an incredible number. Selling this, I don't think that's an issue personally. And that's why I'm not suggesting we do 10 out of the box. Do one. Let's see what happens.
This would fit on a
50-foot lot.
50-foot lot,
Yep. Yep. So I also have floor plans that will fit on a 40-foot lot that I'd done for Habitat as well, helped design those. Those are basically a slab on grade, but they could be, if you did a single family attached, you could do those you can gain 7 foot on one side, and so that they can get a little bit bigger, and they could actually have a basement if you wanted to, if you do them as a single family attached on 40-foot lots. They're two dwellings that are attached at the common wall. And typically, on those, they did attach them at the garage. Yep.
Okay, on the prices here, how much, in your opinion, how much less would the house be if there wasn't a basement? Because I know basements, they cost money to,
Well, so the flat work number will remain the same. The number that you would take out of there would be that foundation number. That's the fourth one from the top. That's about $20,000, $20,000 to $21,000. So, I mean, the square footage that you're gaining out of that, that's fairly cheap square footage, actually. Because if it's a slab on grade, it's never going to, it's hard to make it ever more than 1,046 square feet, unless you put an addition on the house. And it won't be in width, it'll be in depth, because we'll be at full width of the lot, so the ability to put a family room, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom in the basement, that's a lot of added value.
Did you have extra copies of this? Did you leave any out there on the table? If
Yeah,
anybody
I
wants
can
them?
put them back there.
Okay, that'd be great. Any other questions?
No, just one thing in closing, something like this, if it's built, if it could be incentivized in some manner to be owner occupied and not bought as a rental, it would be advantageous,
Absolutely.
because it definitely does. That's the target. The target is to try to get somebody to plant a seed that hope they prosper and hope they end up in a, progression of houses, which each time opens it for somebody else to come into it.
So, I kind of always go back to Habitat, because I was on their board for 17 years, and it is a model that works, is that they keep a percentage of the equity if it sells prior to it being paid off. And so I think they do 10% of the equity that the homeowner earns every year. So if you start, let's say this house was 200,000 and the folks that bought it the next year decide to sell it and they get 210,000. Well, they only get $1,000 of that added equity, and the rest of it goes to Habitat. So something like that, it could be, the 10% over 10 years. I kind of like 5% over 20 years. And then that money could be like what Habitat does, is they roll it right back into their fund and they build a new house with it. So everything it becomes a revolving fund, and at some point, you don't have to have outside resources. It funds itself over years.
Who keeps the 10%, the homeowner or Habitat?
They earn 10% per year.
The
homeowner.
The homeowner, okay.
Yeah, and Habitat gets the remainder of that. So,
On Habitat, if they kept it 10 years, they'd get they'd get all of the proceeds.
Right.
But if they sell at the halfway point, they get half in
yeah,
essence. So.
yeah. And that kind of discourages, flippers and all that, because Habitat does get some of that equity back. But I could see a smaller amount of equity in stretching that out so that it becomes less attractive even to flip them.
Steve, a house built using these specifications, from what you know about TIF financing, would this particular building qualify for TIF financing?
So I don't know very much at all about TIF financing. I don't know. It's someone else will have to answer that question. I put this together with the idea that there probably wouldn't be any TIF financing other than maybe for the lot, and I don't know how that system works. I know in general, I know that, like with some of the other projects that have happened, that the county continues to get the tax dollars that they got before the development started, and then the additional tax dollars goes to the funding of the infrastructure, basically, that, water, sewer, and all that. And then after that bond is paid off, then all of the taxes go to the county or to the taxing entities that are grabbing up a piece of that, essentially? Mm-hmm. Okay.
This might be a workforce housing project, which we haven't had yet.
And that's, my biggest deal is I look at, when I go out on job sites and see people working out there, most of them rent. The guys out there putting these homes together rent. They can't afford a new house. I mean, to me, that's just, that just doesn't make sense.
Bob, I think circling back to your question, it would appear that this could be a micro TIF type of project.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
My
but I
notes had
wasn't.
it, single
Just-
family, less than 350,000. Some other criteria there, but it would appear that, and it has to be plotted for over 60 years. So it'd have to be in it'd have to be like a fill-in neighborhood, fill-in lot.
I think it would be a great thing for us, to really consider, because this is the kind of house starters need.
Yep.
And
And it
city
fits
need.
in right with the older neighborhoods. This square footage is very common, a lot of those older homes might even be a little bit less than this actually on the main floor.
Those ones you put in out of El Dorado.
Yeah, my answer to that would be, Bob, I think it would qualify for both micro and for new development. And in the case of it being a workforce house, not only is it the infrastructure cost, but then you get part of the build costs as well. So you could get a significant contribution of TIF back toward potentially reducing the cost of that home, if that's the way it was set up.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, guys, if we'll open this,
Just on this item.
yeah, we'll open a public comment on on Steve's presentation. If you'd like to come up, if you have questions or anything you want to add to it, we'll open up public comment.
So if not, we'll proceed to the next item. We'll talk about just a round robin, go through our committee members and just talk about any things that you've got on your mind in regards to TIF and TIF committee. And I think we pick on Zach usually, so we'll start with Scott this time. And
Thanks, we usually have time to I think, as we get into our public comment period, I'm diverting a little bit here. I hope as the public comment period comes up, we can have a civil conversation, civil discourse this month. We had a bad one last month, and I'll admit I was part of it. And I'm not going to be that way anymore, and I hope the rest of our community isn't that way anymore either. So that's all I'm going to say.
As I said earlier, I've been in a house exactly like this floor plan in Lincoln. I know Lincoln is not Norfolk, Norfolk's not Lincoln. But personally, I'd like to see a bunch of these built because I have no doubt they'll sell. I have no doubt. And I think it's a great floor plan. I would call it a starter home, workforce home, whatever you want to call it. But I'd like to see a bunch of them built. And if there's some TIF money used for that, that's okay. That's all I've got.
I guess in my opinion, we're not building this. It's not really competing with other things. If anything, I think it adds people into the workforce that are, you know, spending money on rent every year, and hopefully they one day could get their feet into the housing game. I work with a lot of young people all the time that would love to purchase houses. I think there's a misconception at times that young people want to rent. My son is 26 years old, lives in Lincoln, and he wanted to rent because he didn't want the responsibility of owning a house. But at 26 now, he's looking at purchasing a house. And I think at some point we get you stay in a rental because you can't afford to get out of the rental because of the down payment and the payments and stuff like that. The other thing is this doesn't solve every problem in our community necessarily when it comes to housing or whatnot, but it certainly solves, but many of them are being addressed presently. This really is not. And so I feel like that something like this, we had that Vitality Village presentation, and you know, sometimes marrying all the best ideas from our community, from our bright people that are here, our problem solvers, and look at what other people do and come out with a better product is I think a recipe for success.
at the last meeting, I brought up an issue regarding conversations between elected officials and developers regarding tax increment financing. And I just want to clarify that. It's a big concern to me. So I did a Google AI search regarding tax increment financing and ex parte communications. And this is what I got back from Google. It says the legality and ethical concerns regarding ex parte communications in the context of tax increment financing depend on whether the local government's decision-making process is considered quasi-judicial or legislative. In general, ex parte communications, one-sided discussions with a decision-maker without the presence of all involved parties, are strictly prohibited in quasi-judicial matters, but are a normal part of the legislative process. So quasi-judicial versus legislative decisions. Quasi-judicial actions apply existing general rules to a specific request from a private party, such as a developer's application for a TIF district. These proceedings are similar to a court hearing, requiring due process, public notice, and a fair hearing. In this context, ex parte communications are improper as they deny due process to opposing parties who cannot hear and rebut the statements made. The creation of a TIF district to benefit a specific private development often falls under the quasi-judicial standard for local governments. This means that the following activities would constitute improper ex parte communications. Private conversations, a developer or their representative speaking privately to a city council member or planning commissioner about their TIF proposal outside of a public meeting. To ensure fairness and transparency in TIF decisions, many jurisdictions require strict adherence to ex parte rules. I feel it's critically important for the City of Norfolk to implement ex parte rules regarding communications on TIF requests, to ensure fairness and integrity in the process with the utmost concern with ethical principles.
Jim, to clarify on that, because I want a better understanding of that, of your thoughts on that. You're not saying that that individual developer can't talk to city staff.
No,
It's just elected officials.
Just elected officials, decision makers. Other cities, not in Nebraska that I've found, but in other states have specific rules against that.
Well, Scott, thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
Because that's what I was going to say. Okay. Same thing. We're here to,
Great minds think alike then.
they do. We're here to improve upon the process of TIF procedures in the city of Norfolk. The people sitting behind this dais are not going to agree on everything. And we have to learn to agree to disagree. And not all of us are going to get everything that we would like to have. But what we need to do and need to focus on is doing the best thing for the city and the community. Like this, I haven't seen anything like this, Steve. It was very good. I like it very much. And I think that tying that together with micro TIF would be a good thing. Like some folks have said, we don't have to do 10 or 20 or 30 of these all at one time. We can start out with 1 or 2 or 3 and put that in the planning process. Because I'm not opposed to keeping the original TIF with some modification and with the thing that they had in Columbus. I think that was great. Those things we can do for ourselves benefit the community, benefit those people who want to buy those homes, and I think we can still then benefit and provide some income to the developers as well. So, all in all, I just think we need to start putting something together, because there, from what I understand, some TIF projects in the making, and we'd like them all to get started on a even starting date so that everybody understands what's going on. And it'll give the city some time to look at what we're doing too, because they're the final authority, we're not.
The way it seemed, I wrote down the 4 things that we're trying to get to work together. We're trying to get land bank, the TIF, workforce housing, and humanity housing, put all them together and shake them up a little bit. Something's got to come out that's going to look dang good. I don't know how to do it, but.
I would like to concentrate from this point forward on this committee coming up with What are we actually going to recommend to the city council? I think, unless there's some information that we still need, I think we need to start doing that, because otherwise we're just spinning our wheels. And in order to do that, I'm not sure the process, if then the mayor has to appoint somebody for John Sehigh's place? Or if we
That would
nominate
be, Jim, and that is the way it's set up, I would appoint somebody. That would-
Okay,
That
all
would
right.
be acceptable.
Well-
through- Jim, John was one of the folks I appointed originally.
Okay, so everybody's in agreement if that's the process that we're gonna go through? Okay, so if somebody has an interest in taking John's place, talk to Troy. But I'd like to get started on our purpose. I think we have the information that we need, unless there's something else that we're missing.
I think there's several areas we agree. If you listen to the last meeting, you would think we don't agree on much, but there is a lot we do agree on. And some problems we're not going to solve in this group. But we can have some successes if we really start focusing where we do agree. I think that we can, I think maybe the next meeting should be shaped and maybe do your homework and come with areas where you feel there's agreement. Affordable housing is definitely one of those, I think, and then we had the appraiser access, and there are just certain things that we do agree on. Once we get some of that low-hanging fruit done, then we can kind of tackle some of the things where maybe there's some dissension or some difference of opinions and work way through that way.
But we don't have to say, this is what you do, council. We can say, this is what you should investigate. These are the kinds of things you should investigate before you approve this project, not, do you understand what I'm saying?
We're making recommendations.
That's a good point, and maybe we come out with a list of questions that we want the city council to ask themselves about the project, and
Right.
does it meet those criteria? And I think there's room for dissension, and maybe we put forth to the city council, even the areas that we don't agree on, here's things that people brought up that they felt were important, so take it for what you will, but those are other issues that somewhere in the community there's some concerns about, and I think it's okay to bring that forward as well.
Yeah, do a dissenting opinion kind of a thing.
Be aware of this. You know, telling the council, be aware of these issues, and this is I don't know that they are.
Well, apparently I missed a really good meeting last time. I'll agree with what Jan said. I think we really need to start moving forward, because otherwise we're just going to continue to take in information. At some point, we have to do something with it. Steve, I really appreciate you putting this all together. If we're truly looking at moving forward with something like this, I think the city really has to get serious about being the quote-unquote developer like Columbus did, because just running some real quick numbers, and I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade here, but we're $270 into this house by the time it's all said and done. If you have a contractor come in and do it, the cheapest lot I could find for sale in Norfolk right now is $20,000. That's not meeting any neighborhood covenants or overlay district covenants that would change the outside of the house to require stonework or anything like that. So, you know, there's going to have to be all parties come together to pull this off, because there's a lot more moving parts than just saying, hey, this is a really good thing, we need to move forward. Everybody's going to have to be on board with it, because there's going to have to be certain city buy-in and help to make sure that it's meeting all the criteria for the neighborhood that it's going to go into also, because if we try and put it into a empty lot over here in the River Overlay District, it's not going to meet it. So those are things that we got to be able to look at and consider too when doing these kind of things. So great, really appreciate it. I've been trying to do something like this personally for a long time and could never get it under 250. So if we can pull it off, I think it would be an amazing thing. But those are all things we have to consider, but we have to move forward, because otherwise we're going to sit here and continue to eat ourselves alive with information. And I think we're ready to move forward.
And I agree with that. The one positive about all the information is we've learned a lot along this process. Even today, we learned a bunch more, so it has been good for us, and I think good for the community too, so.
I just figure out where there's commonalities and things. Just don't take we're not making a recommendation, but is there anyone on this group up here that if that would be opposed to using TIF or micro TIF or some form of that, if there was a way to implement Steve's plan or something like that in? Because there's a perception that some wouldn't, and so.
I'm not sure.
Is there anyone that would oppose that on this group, just trying to gauge where we're all at from a feeling standpoint? From if there was a way to take Steve's plan and blend that with micro TIF or TIF in some manner, would there be an opposition by anyone in this group personally, for that type of a project?
I would not, but kind of getting back to what Zach referenced, it has to be neighborhood specific. Because on the micro TIF piece anyway, I believe it has to be in a subdivision that's been plotted for over 60 years.
It has to meet the blighted.
It has to be blighted, yeah, it doesn't have to be blighted, but it has to meet the standards, so this concept right here, to me, is workable in certain areas of town, and I think that's kind of what you were alluding to when you were talking.
And then even on a bigger scale, you could do something like a Vitality Village would be full TIF. And not that you would or wouldn't, and again, we're making recommendations. We're not setting policy or anything anyway, but we are trying to help solve problems in the community that do exist as well, or help guide.
But I don't think micro TIF gets into those bigger developments. Those are kind of one-offs, yeah.
Now we'll do a public comment section just on overall on everything, and if anyone has input they would like to do on tonight's meeting or overall, you're welcome to come on up. Just sign in and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Chuck Olson, 1303 Miles Drive here in Norfolk. I want to step back to the last meeting. I was not present. Then I'm going to move forward on a couple things that you all said, just to have a little bit of input. There seems to be a huge interpretation of this Open Meetings Act. And I was appalled when I got back into town and pulled out the newspaper and read what happened in this meeting. To make some statements that we are unable to go visit with our city councilmen seemed to be what I had read. And that is further from the truth. It came back up here this evening, and now we're posting the actual Open Meetings Act for everybody to see. And apparently we have AI that we can go out, and because I'm not the brightest person in the world, I start reading all 12 pages of the Open Meetings Act, and I get glossy-eyed and go, I'm not sure I understood what I just read. So you ask AI certain questions about, is it improper for somebody to go visit with a city council person about specific projects like TIF? And what I get about it, when I get out of the AI is, and first of all, reading page 2 of the Open Meetings Act, specifically bullet point 4, page 2, says in Cook versus Lower Loop case 2019, although a committee was a subcommittee of a natural resources district board, it was not subject to the Open Meetings Act because there was never a quorum of board members in attendance. And that's what we have to kind of look at, is if there's not a quorum, it's not considered a meeting, and it's not subject to the Open Meetings Act. That's straight from the Open Meetings Act. So we can interpret that here with AI and say, yes, a private conversation between city and a city councilman is permissible under the Nebraska Open Meetings Act because the act applies to meetings of public bodies which involve discussions of public policy, and a private one-on-one conversation is not considered a public meeting under the act. Therefore, a meeting is defined as a gathering of public body where public policy is discussed or formulated, a private meeting between one citizen and one council member does not meet this definition, therefore does not fall under the Act's provisions. That's all I'm going to say about that. Please go visit with your city council person if you have any desire to talk about anything. It is permissible. It's not a violation of public policy or the Meeting Act. A couple other things, and Jen, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let's move forward. Let's come up with some recommendations. And I've been begging this committee from day one to say, if we're using TIF money, I also want to understand what is the revenue that is coming in for the city and the tax entity here when we have these projects going on. So anything that's recommended to that, I would just beg you to come up with a formula as to what the revenue is, because to state that there's no revenue coming in on TIF projects, I don't think is accurate. And Steve, just real quick question for you. You mentioned start with one house, don't start with 10. What's a building time frame if somebody said go on that one house to when it's finished?
Well, I'd like to say, oh, we could get it in this fall yet, but everybody's booked until next spring. And so typically on a house of that size, you can probably do in 90 to 120 days.
Okay, so 90 to 120 days. I've been looking at building projects and I was thinking that was going to be a year. So thank you for, yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I look at what our demand might be and I'm very interested to see what's on the, what we're going to see. What is the demand? But if it's 100 homes, this is going to take a long time to officially start out with one and then maybe go to 10, which is kind of a, gosh, that's a lot type of thing. And what other avenues are we going? I like the Habitat for Humanity model, big fan of that, love that particular idea, but I think we just need to think, what if we are 100 houses behind? What are we going to do at that time? And I think that's a perfect opportunity for some TIF and things like that, and just don't want the door to get shut on those opportunities. Thank you.
Anyone else like to step up or have any input? If not, Scott's going to get home earlier tonight than past meetings, so. All right, then we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, folks.